Picture a mind that never forgets, not a single word, not a moment of pain, not one scream heard in the dark. Now imagine that mind belongs to a 9-year-old girl born into slavery, whose extraordinary abilities could shatter the scientific foundations of an entire nation. This is the story of how America's greatest genius was deliberately erased from history. Before we dive into this incredible true story, if you love uncovering the forgotten mysteries of our past, please hit that subscribe button for The Whispered Histories. Ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. And if this tale moves you, leave a comment below with your thoughts. Your support helps us keep bringing these hidden histories to light. In March 1863, as the Civil War raged and split the nation in two, Dr. Samuel Callicott received a letter that would destroy his life's work. A respected researcher at Philadelphia's Academy of Natural Sciences and one of America's leading experts in racial science, Callicott had spent decades measuring skulls and publishing papers that supposedly proved the intellectual inferiority of black people. His research provided scientific legitimacy to slavery itself. The letter described something impossible. A 9-year-old colored girl in a contraband camp near Alexandria, Virginia, who could recite entire medical textbooks after hearing them once, solve complex mathematical equations without instruction, and speak fluent Latin despite never attending school. Callicott dismissed it as abolitionist propaganda until 3 separate military officials confirmed the account. The girl had correctly diagnosed a physician's medication errors and saved 2 soldiers' lives. Obsessed with disproving what threatened everything he believed, Callicott traveled to Virginia. What he discovered there would force him to make an impossible choice: destroy his career or destroy a child. The contraband camps surrounding Alexandria in early 1863 were monuments to chaos and desperate hope. Following Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, thousands of formerly enslaved people flooded into Union-controlled territories. They lived in sprawling camps of salvaged canvas, splintered boards, and rusted metal, where the air perpetually carried the smell of wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and sickness. In Camp Relief No. 7, among 240 souls, lived a girl named Eliza Davis. She had arrived 3 weeks earlier with refugees from a burned tobacco plantation outside Richmond. Small for her 9 years, thin from lifelong hunger, she had dark skin like polished walnut and eyes that made adults uncomfortable. Eyes that absorbed everything, constantly calculating and recording. Lieutenant James Carmichael, a young Massachusetts officer conducting the camp census, was the first to notice something extraordinary. During their interview, Eliza's gaze fixed on a medical textbook lying open on his desk, Gray's Anatomy, with its detailed illustration of the human heart. "Can you read?" Carmichael asked, knowing that teaching slaves to read had been punishable by whipping. "No, sir," Eliza whispered, "but I can see the pictures." "What do you see?" Her finger moved toward the page, then pulled back as if it might burn her. "That's the heart, sir. The aorta carries blood from the ventricular sinister, the left ventricle, to the body. The vena cava brings it back. The right side pushes blood to the lungs through the arteriole pulmonalis." Carmichael's pen clattered to the desk. "How do you know those terms?" "Master's son was studying to be a doctor, sir. He used to read his books aloud. I would clean his room while he studied." "And you memorized medical terminology from overhearing it?" "I remember everything I hear, sir. Every word." Over the next hour, Carmichael tested this impossible claim. Eliza reproduced conversations word for word, including dialect and pronunciation, even in German and French. She recited complex passages from medical texts, and more unsettling, explained them with genuine comprehension, using terminology correctly and grasping concepts that should have required years of formal education. When Carmichael mentioned a patient whose symptoms puzzled the camp physician, Eliza asked 3 questions, then suggested the man likely suffered from pleurisy, complicated by malnutrition. She recommended a specific treatment protocol. The diagnosis was correct. The treatment worked. Within a week, Carmichael's report reached the War Department in Washington. In 1863's fevered political atmosphere, with the war's outcome uncertain and millions of freed slaves presenting an urgent question, Eliza Davis represented something explosive, living proof that the racial theories justifying slavery were scientifically false. The South's entire social order rested on the belief that Negroes were intellectually inferior, incapable of higher reasoning, suited only for manual labor. Even Northern scientists and many abolitionists largely accepted this view, though they attributed it to lack of education rather than innate deficiency. But a 9-year-old colored girl who could match or exceed the intellectual capacity of educated white men, who possessed abilities that seemed to transcend normal human cognition entirely, this was dangerous. Dr. Samuel Callicott received the War Department's request on April 3rd. The request came with unusual stipulations: examine the girl in complete secrecy, share findings only with specific officials, and prevent any public knowledge. The department understood the implications. If abolitionists learned of this, it would become powerful propaganda. If Southern sympathizers discovered it, they would demand the girl's suppression by any means necessary. Callicott departed for Alexandria on April 6th, bringing his instruments, calipers for skull measurement, intelligence assessment tools, and an extensive library of racial science texts. He also brought his certainty that this would be simple to explain. Everything has a rational explanation, he told the camp's medical officer, Dr. Marcus Lindley. I suspect we'll find this is a case of highly developed memory combined with mimicry. Some individuals of inferior races can be trained to perform complex tasks without truly understanding them, much like a parrot can speak without comprehension. Lindley's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The tent serving as Eliza's quarters was small but clean. She sat on her cot, hands folded, wearing a donated grey dress. Her guardian, an older woman named Ruth, watched the white men with the weariness of someone who knew exactly how dangerous such attention could be. Callicott's first impression, recorded in his journal, noted, "Typical Negro child, exhibiting the docility expected of her kind." Then, Eliza looked up. "Good morning, Dr. Callicott," she said softly. "Dr. Lindley mentioned you studied in Edinburgh under Robert Knox. I heard him read some of your papers. You believe Negro skull capacity averages approximately 5 cubic inches less than Caucasian skulls, primarily in the frontal region, which you associate with reasoning and moral sense." Callicott stared. "How could you possibly know where I studied?" "Dr. Lindley told Lieutenant Carmichael yesterday afternoon, sir. At 2:47 specifically, you were discussing the Knox controversy and his involvement in the Burke and Hare murders. This was impossible. That conversation had occurred over 200 yards away. You couldn't have heard us," Callicott said. "Sound carries in camps like this, sir, especially when the wind comes from the east, like it did yesterday. I hear many conversations." Over the next 6 hours, Callicott conducted the most rigorous intellectual examination of his career. He read passages in multiple languages. Eliza reproduced them flawlessly. He presented complex philosophical arguments. She analyzed them, finding logical inconsistencies. He gave her mathematical proofs. She identified errors in published work. During one exchange about bloodletting for fever, Eliza asked, "If blood carries oxygen to tissues and fever means the body is fighting infection, why remove the blood that carries resources to fight the disease? Wouldn't that weaken them further?" Callicott had no answer. Her question cut to a fundamental logical problem most physicians ignored. When Dr. Lindley played a complex musical sequence on violin, Eliza identified every note. "That's from Mozart's Requiem, Confutatis Maledictis, bars 43 through 48, but you played the F slightly flat, about a quarter tone." "I've never played that piece where you could hear it," Lindley said, his hand trembling. "Master's daughter practiced it for her wedding, sir. 2 years ago, she played it 47 times. I remember all of them." "You can recall a musical sequence you heard once 2 years ago?" Callicott's voice was sharp. "I remember everything, sir. Every sound, every word, every face. I can't forget, even when I want to. The implications hung in the tent like smoke. To remember everything, every moment, every sensation, every piece of information ever encountered, without the merciful dulling that protected human minds from being overwhelmed by the past. By late afternoon, Callicott's assistant William Driscoll was openly disturbed. "Sir, this is beyond anything in the literature. This isn't just intelligence. This is something else entirely." Callicott attempted physical examinations to find abnormalities that might explain her capabilities. Everything was normal. Her skull measurements fell within typical ranges. There were no physical differences to account for what she could do. "Perhaps the theories are wrong," Driscoll suggested quietly. Callicott whirled on him. "The theories are based on hundreds of measurements, thousands of observations, decades of research. They cannot simply be wrong." Yet even as he said it, Callicott knew he was lying to himself. Here was a Negro child who had received no formal education, who had grown up in slavery's most brutal conditions, yet possessed cognitive abilities exceeding anything he had encountered in any human of any race. If she was possible, what else was possible? How many other enslaved people possessed hidden capabilities suppressed by a system designed to prevent their development? These thoughts terrified Callicott because they threatened to demolish the intellectual edifice of his entire career. Around midnight, unable to sleep, Callicott heard something unusual, a young voice speaking Latin with perfect pronunciation. He followed the sound to the medical tent. Inside, Eliza stood beside a cot where a soldier lay delirious with severe infection. His leg wound was festering. He was expected to die by morning. "The drainage is purulent and foul-smelling," Eliza was saying clinically. "That indicates anaerobic infection. The texts describe it Clostridium perfringens, though they don't know the name yet. It produces gas in the tissue." "We know it's gangrene," Lindley said wearily. "We're preparing to amputate in the morning." "You'll be too late. The infection is spreading to his bloodstream." She pointed to barely visible red streaks. "That's lymphangitis. By morning, it will be systemic. Amputation won't save him. Then he's going to die." "Maybe not." Eliza moved to a medicine cabinet. "I heard you reading about carbolic acid 2 weeks ago from Joseph Lister's paper. He proposes it as an antiseptic. You have some here, don't you?" "Lister's work is controversial. Most surgeons reject it." "Use it now. Clean the wound with diluted carbolic solution. Remove all the dead tissue, debride aggressively. Then pack the wound with carbolic dressing. It might kill the infection before it reaches his heart." Dr. Lindley looked at Callicott, who had been watching from the entrance. Callicott wanted to dismiss the suggestion as dangerous presumption, but he had watched her all day. He knew with sickening certainty that she understood the situation better than anyone else in that tent. "Try it," he heard himself say. The next 2 hours were brutal. They cleaned the wound while the soldier screamed. They cut deep, following Eliza's instructions. They packed the wound and waited. By dawn, the soldier's fever had broken. The red lines had stopped advancing. He would survive. Eliza had saved his life with knowledge the medical establishment wouldn't widely accept for another decade. If you're finding this story as compelling as I am, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Whispered Histories. Share it with someone who appreciates the hidden corners of our past. Your engagement truly helps us continue this work. That morning, Callicott wrote his preliminary report, handshaking. Subject demonstrates cognitive capabilities that exceed current scientific understanding, inconsistent with subject's age, education, and racial category. New orders arrived from the War Department. Continue examination. Determine extent of abilities. Identify limitations. Maintain absolute secrecy. Do not allow subject to interact with anyone not specifically authorized. Under no circumstances permit subject's existence to become public knowledge. The implications were clear. The War Department wasn't interested in scientific truth. They wanted control. Eliza Davis was a weapon, a threat, or both, but not to be allowed to simply exist as a free human being with extraordinary gifts. Over the following weeks, additional researchers tested Eliza in every domain imaginable. She demonstrated capabilities far beyond supposed limitations. She could calculate astronomical positions without instruments, speak languages heard only once, identify chemical compounds by smell, solve problems in minutes that had taken mathematicians years. But the tests took their toll. Eliza grew thinner, quieter, the light in her eyes dimmed. Ruth, her guardian, reported that Eliza barely slept. When she did, she had nightmares. "She remembers everything, sir," Ruth told Dr. Lindley in a conversation Callicott overheard. "Every lashing she saw, every child sold away, every scream, every tear, every horror. She can't forget none of it. It's all there in her head forever, fresh as the day it happened. How does a child live with that?" In early May, Confederate raiders hit another contraband camp 20 miles south, killing or capturing everyone there. "Word is spreading," Dr. Lindley explained grimly, "about Eliza. There are rumors of a Negro girl with impossible abilities. Southern sympathizers want her eliminated before abolitionists turn her into propaganda. Confederate intelligence wants her captured to prove the rumors are lies. Everyone wants to control her or destroy her." That night, Callicott made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He went to Eliza's tent alone, without witnesses or instruments. "Eliza," he said quietly, "do you understand what you are? What your abilities mean?" She looked at him with those two old eyes. "I understand that I'm dangerous, sir. That's why everyone's afraid." "You're not dangerous. You're extraordinary." "They're the same thing, sir. For someone like me." She closed her book carefully. "When you're a Negro and you're extraordinary, you become a problem. Either you prove something people don't want to believe, or you become something they want to own and control." She told him about the plantation, about the master's hunting dog, smarter than any dog they'd ever seen. When a visiting planter offered a fortune for it, the master's son refused. A week later, the dog was found shot dead in the woods. Master's son cried for a week, but his father told him it was a mercy. Something that valuable and that smart would have been stolen eventually or caused trouble. Better to end it quick. "You think someone will kill you?" Callicott felt ice in his stomach. "I think someone will try to use me until I break, or they'll kill me to keep others from using me. Either way, I don't get to just be Eliza." "What do you want?" he asked. "If you could have anything." For the first time, her carefully controlled expression cracked. Tears filled her eyes but didn't fall. "I want to forget, sir. Just for one day. I want to forget everything I've seen and heard and felt." Her voice broke slightly. "I don't want to remember my mother's face when Master sold her. Who doesn't remember exactly what she said? 'Be good, baby girl. Maybe we see each other in heaven.' I don't want to remember the chains or the way she tried not to cry, because crying made Master angry." She continued in barely a whisper, "I remember every person I ever saw whipped, every child sold, every woman who disappeared into Master's house at night and came out different. I remember the auctioneer when they sold my baby brother. Good breeding stock, strong back, prime field hand potential. He was 6 years old." Her voice steadied with terrible control. "I remember everything, Dr. Callicott. Every single moment of horror, and I can't forget any of it. That's what my gift really is. Perfect memory of every nightmare I've ever lived." Callicott felt something break inside him. All his life, he had pursued scientific truth with clinical detachment, measuring skulls and building theories about racial hierarchies while maintaining the comfortable distance of academic inquiry. But sitting across from this child, hearing her describe the unbearable weight of perfect memory, he understood the human cost of the system he had spent years trying to justify. "I can't give you forgetting," Callicott said finally, "but I can make sure you're not treated as a specimen anymore, that your abilities are yours, not something for others to exploit." "Can you really do that, sir?" There was desperate hope in her voice. "Yes, I'll find a way." "What about your research? Your theories. If you help me hide, you can't publish what you found. You'll have to lie. Your colleagues will think you failed. My reputation is built on measuring skulls to prove that people like you are inferior, Callicott said bitterly. Meeting you has taught me that my entire career is built on lies we told ourselves to justify slavery. Maybe I deserve to lose that reputation. Eliza studied him with ancient eyes. You could publish the truth about me and become famous. You'd prove that Negroes can be just as intelligent as white people, and destroy you in the process. The moment I publish, you become the most famous Negro in America. Every scientist will want to study you. Every politician will want to use you as evidence. You'll never have privacy or peace or the chance to be anything except a specimen and a symbol. Over the next 3 days, Callicott threw himself into deception with the same intensity he had once devoted to research. He wrote his report with meticulous care, phrasing every sentence to suggest disappointment. Subject demonstrates highly developed rote memorization consistent with documented cases of savant syndrome. However, deeper examination reveals significant limitations in true comprehension and abstract reasoning. Subject can reproduce heard material with impressive fidelity, but shows little evidence of genuine understanding or original thought. It was all lies. But he wrote with scientific authority, providing just enough technical language to discourage further inquiry. He concluded, while subject presents as an interesting case study in memory function, continued examination is not warranted. Subject shows no evidence of capabilities that would challenge current understanding of racial intellectual capacity. Dr. Lindley, reading the draft, looked at Callicott with something between respect and concern. This is completely false. Yes, you're sacrificing your greatest scientific discovery to protect her. I'm sacrificing a lie I told myself for years to give a child a chance at life. On May 24th, 1863, Callicott saw Eliza for the last time as she and Ruth boarded a wagon heading north to a Quaker school in Pennsylvania. He had arranged everything: new identity papers, funding for her education, letters of introduction to trusted abolitionists. She would travel as Sarah Mitchell, orphaned daughter of free Negroes from Maryland. Before climbing into the wagon, Eliza looked at him. "Thank you for lying in your report." He started. "How did you—" "I read it, sir, when you left it on the desk 3 days ago. I remember every word." She paused. "Will you write down what really happened? Not now, maybe, but someday, so someone knows the truth?" "Yes," he promised. "Someday when it's safe, I'll write down everything." The wagon turned a corner, and she was gone. Callicott returned to Philadelphia. His colleagues accepted his disappointing conclusions. Dr. Samuel Callicott was too respected to be doubted on his professional judgment. But he could no longer look at his research without seeing Eliza's face. He began withdrawing from the scientific community. His publications ceased. By 1865, he had quietly resigned from the Academy of Natural Sciences. He moved to upstate New York and never practiced science again. But he continued to receive carefully coded letters about Eliza's progress from his Quaker contacts. Then in March 1865, the letters stopped. The message was cryptic. "The bird has flown." Searching, Callicott's blood ran cold. Eliza was missing. He traveled immediately to the Quaker school in Pennsylvania. The director, Hannah Pembroke, was distraught. Sarah Mitchell had disappeared on March 17th from the library. There were signs of struggle, an overturned chair, scattered papers, but the constable dismissed it. "Freed Negro children run away all the time," he'd said. But Ruth was convinced Sarah had been taken. For a week before her disappearance, Eliza had felt watched. She'd seen the same man 3 times, always at a distance, staring at the school. Hannah handed Callicott a letter found hidden under Eliza's mattress. "My real name is Eliza Davis. I'm writing this because I am afraid. For the past week, I have been followed. I remember the man's face perfectly. I remember everything. I've seen him watching our school. I believe someone has found out about my abilities and is planning to take me. The letter detailed specific dates and times, then concluded, "If something happens to me, I want someone to know I existed. I could remember everything. I could solve problems that adults couldn't solve. I was not what the scientists said Negro people are. I was proof that the theories are wrong, and whether I live or die, that truth exists." Callicott tracked down his former assistant, William Driscoll, now working at Pennsylvania Hospital. "Where is she?" Callicott's voice was cold fury. Driscoll's face drained of color. Finally, he confessed. At a medical conference the previous fall, drunk and angry at colleagues citing Callicott's racial theories, he'd said he'd witnessed evidence that would overturn everything. He hadn't given details, but he'd mentioned sealed documentation protecting an extraordinary subject. "You told Edmund Voss," Callicott said hollowly. Voss was a collector of rare cognitive cases, known for maintaining a private research facility in Maryland where subjects didn't always leave. "You gave him enough information to start looking," Callicott continued. "A man with Voss's resources could find her. I didn't mean to. If she dies, William, I want you to remember every day for the rest of your life that it was your drunken pride that killed her." Callicott hired investigators. He tracked rumors. He traveled to Voss's facility in western Maryland, Thornhill, an isolated estate surrounded by stone walls, but was turned away by armed guards. In late May, he received an anonymous letter. "A colored girl was brought there in March. I do not know if she is still there or if she lives, but if you are looking for your girl, that is where to look." Callicott hired Marcus Webb, a former operative, to conduct surveillance. Webb's team watched Thornhill for 2 weeks. Through a third-floor window, they saw a small, dark-skinned figure moving occasionally past the glass. "Someone's being held in that room," Webb reported. The extraction was planned for June 23, 1865. Webb and his team would infiltrate at night, reach the third floor, extract the captive, and retreat. Just before dawn on June 24th, Webb returned alone. "We got in, reached the room." He paused, but it was empty, recently vacated. The room contained medical equipment, charts, hundreds of pages of notes, all documenting Subject E from late March through June 20th. Perfect memory, extraordinary analytical capacity, extensive testing. Webb's jaw tightened. Some of it wasn't kind. But she was alive as of 3 days ago. The final entry read, "Subject shows signs of severe psychological deterioration. Memory remains perfect, but emotional stability declining, nightmares increasing. Subject experiencing difficulty distinguishing memories from present reality. Recommendation: terminate study and relocate subject to appropriate facility." Then, nothing. Callicott spent a week reading Voss's notes, meticulous, clinical, horrifying in their detachment. Voss had tested Eliza relentlessly. Sleep deprivation to test memory formation. Painful stimuli to test memory of trauma. Impossible problems to document her failures alongside successes. Through the scientific language, Callicott could see Eliza breaking. Early entries noted compliance and resilience. Later, resistance, tears, refusal to cooperate. Still later, subject displays increasing dissociation, states she cannot distinguish which memories are from her enslavement, the Virginia camp, or current captivity. All exist with equal immediacy. Past traumas feel as present and real as current experiences. Psychological burden of perfect memory becoming unsustainable. Then, the abrupt termination. Study ended, subject relocated. Where? Voss's notes didn't say. In July, Callicott received one more letter from a dying Union officer clearing his conscience. His unit had been ordered to extract a Negro girl posing as a national security risk in March 1865. They delivered her to a facility in Maryland. Later, he learned the facility was private, not government-run. They'd been unwitting participants in kidnapping disguised as official business. The letter continued. In late June, She was transferred to a federal asylum in Washington. One of my unit members said she was in bad condition, malnourished, nonverbal, unresponsive. The paperwork classified her as a freed slave suffering from severe mental disorder. He said they delivered her to St. Elizabeth's Asylum. He said asylums like that don't keep good records on charity patients. One more lost Negro girl would simply disappear. Callicott traveled to St. Elizabeth Hospital immediately. He spent weeks searching admission records, patient registries, death certificates. He walked through wards full of vacant-eyed patients, looking for a young Negro woman who might be Eliza, now 19, if she had survived. He never found her. There were dozens of young Negro women admitted around the right time with vague diagnoses: melancholia, mania, derangement. None demonstrated recognition when he spoke to them. Either Eliza was not there, or she was too far gone to respond, or she had died and been buried in the asylum's unmarked cemetery, where hundreds of unclaimed patients lay in anonymous graves. In October 1873, Callicott gave up his search. Callicott returned to New York, broken. He had failed Eliza in every possible way. He destroyed all his research on racial science, his measurements, theories, publications. He burned years of work and watched it turn to ash. But he kept 3 items, placing them in a sealed box with instructions that it be donated to the Academy 50 years after his death, not to be opened until 1939. A small blue ribbon Eliza had worn in her hair, a page from a medical textbook with notes in her childish handwriting, and a letter. In the letter, he described everything: his examination of Eliza, her extraordinary abilities, his tests, his lies, his failed protection. He explained her abduction, captivity, and disappearance into the asylum system, or death. He ended with questions that had consumed him. I devoted my career to proving the intellectual inferiority of the Negro race. Then I met a 9-year-old Negro girl who possessed greater cognitive abilities than any person I had ever encountered. I tried to save her by hiding the evidence. But in doing so, I may have caused her death, or worse. Her imprisonment in an asylum where she lives still with her perfect, unbearable memory. Was I a coward? Should I have told the truth, let her become famous and studied and burdened with representing her entire race, or was I right to try to give her a chance at a normal life? I will die not knowing. I leave this question to whoever reads this in whatever future you inhabit. What should I have done? What was the right choice? Dr. Samuel Callicott died on March 17, 1889, exactly 24 years after Eliza's disappearance. The sealed box was rediscovered in 1941. Scholars debated its authenticity, but by then, Eliza Davis was too far in the past, too uncertain, too fragmentary, to serve as more than a historical footnote. She is a ghost now, a brilliant child who may have possessed the most extraordinary cognitive abilities ever documented, who lived through slavery, who briefly intersected with the scientific establishment at a crucial moment in American history, and who then disappeared completely into a system designed to hide and forget people like her. Did she survive her captivity? Did she die in Voss's facility or St. Elizabeth's Asylum? Did her perfect, unbearable memory finally break her? Or did she find some way to endure? We will never know. All that remains is Callicott's question and the haunting image of a small girl with eyes that remembered everything, who existed at the intersection of slavery and science, who might have changed history if she had been allowed to live, who instead became one more casualty of a system that could not tolerate her existence. What do you think happened to Eliza? Did she survive? Should Dr. Callicott have published his findings no matter the cost to her? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm deeply curious about your perspective on this impossible moral dilemma. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to the Whispered Histories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the forgotten corners of the past. Share this video with someone who appreciates complex, often tragic stories that deserve to be remembered. Your support means everything to our channel and helps us keep bringing these silenced voices back to light. History is full of voices that were silenced, stories that were buried, truths too dangerous to tell. Sometimes our job is simply to remember they existed and to honor their memory by refusing to let them be forgotten completely. Eliza Davis remembered everything. The least we can do is remember her. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep questioning, keep discovering, and keep the whispered histories alive.